Hey everybody, how's it going? Christian from Treasure Town here, and I'm really excited. Today we're going to speak with Tristan Tang, Oriental Numismatist on Instagram, about his experience collecting coins. He recently wrote an article for the PCGS Rare Coin Market Report, and we're going to kind of just elaborate and also think through the basics of collecting Asian and East Asian coins. So thanks for appearing today.
Thank you.
What would you say in terms of just a brief background in terms of what your focus is in coinage, maybe how you got into it, but really what your involvement with coins is today?
All right. So, brief introduction. I'm Tristan Tang. I'm almost 15 years old, and I'm second generation Taiwanese American. I started collecting coins in about 2014 when my grandpa gave me 66 coins because he was 66 years old at that time. And I kind of really didn't think about it that much for about 2 years, and then just one day I just took it out, started sorting them. I kind of thought they were pretty cool, and then fast forward a couple weeks, I was going to coin shows and just starting to hit it off with coins.
That's great.
Yeah,
I know that you wrote this article and we'll talk more about that, but what sort of coins are you collecting right now?
yeah. So I'm collecting East Asian cash coins, mainly Chinese cash from the Qing Dynasty, but honestly, I'm open to anything that's East Asian.
So maybe to start off this part of the interview, we can sort of start from the beginning in terms of what the start of Asian coinage would have looked like to the extent that you know, and how it sort of evolved to the modern day. Because I think it seems like there's a ton of different coinages operating at the same time, but any insight or information would be great.
Yeah, about the late Qing Dynasty, which was actually before the Zhou Dynasty, about 2000 BC, around that time, the first actual Chinese coins appeared. It was in the form of cowrie shells, and at first they were like actual real cowrie shells, but they kind of uh, later they were carved out of bone, wood, and other material, and those were like the real first uh, currency of China. And then about in the Zhou dynasty, knife and spade coins popped up. They weren't cash coins yet, but they were still a form of currency. And they actually, how they became to be was back then, people used to use tools like, spades or knives to like barter. But as time went by and it kind of took form as money and not as like real actual tools anymore. So that's that. And about in the Warring States period in about like 200 BC, around that time, um, I would say, yeah, the first actual real cash coins appeared. So these were called Yihua. They were produced by one of the Warring States, and people actually, not many people realize that this was actually the first cash coin, because most people think that the banliangs of the Qin dynasty were the first real cash coin. But talking about the banliangs, those were actually the next series we're going to talk about. So when the Qin Empire was still a state, basically the state of Qin, um, the Qin Emperor he approved the casting of a new coinage called Banliang, and those were actually made into when they conquered China proper, and those were also made into the Western Han Empire. So after the Qin was toppled by the Han, uh, they could, as I said, they continued making Banliang, and then afterwards, those were made not legal as currency, and the wuju, or the wuju popped up. Those were a new type of currency, and they were actually more sophisticated in terms of the method of making, because they weren't as crude as Banliang, but yeah. So that's a basic overview of the early monetary history of China. And then afterwards, an usurper called or usurper called Monmon. He took over China about in between the West Han Empire and the East Han Empire.
And what
So
time period would this have been?
this was about first century AD. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay.
So he basically he installed the Emperor King who of the Han Empire as the king or emperor, and he got him assassinated or some way killed about um, before he took over, and then he created a long list of monetary reforms, and the people didn't really like it because he made it so complex that it was just basically impossible to kind of maneuver. And there were like lots of coins. There were uh, key money. There were spade monies. There were a bunch of different currencies. So yeah, he got dethroned after that and replaced by the Han Empire again. So yeah.
And
So afterwards, it was mostly just like uniform cash coins. There were no more knife monies, key monies, spade monies. No more of that. It was just cash coins with the square hole you see in the middle. So yeah.
and the cash coinage, how did that change between dynasties, or I maybe when did it start? And then I don't even know exactly when you'd say the cash coins would have been stopped being used. Was it all the way up until like the late 1800s?
Yeah. So the last cash coins were actually made by Vietnam in 1945, about that time, when the last Vietnamese emperor got dethroned by the French. Yeah,
Okay.
the French colonial authorities. So, but the last Chinese cash coin was actually made in the Republican era uh, in 1912.
Hmm.
But after that, no more cash coins were made in China.
And would they have traded with the same value by emperor, or how is the and also how were they valued? Did silver and gold have a place in the coinage system and the monetary system, or was it really just sort of copper cash?
Yeah, so silver definitely did have a place in monetary, like the monetary system of China, but they weren't made into actual real cash coins. They were mainly used for like trade with other countries, uh, and but there were silver coins made in the Qing Empire. That
Hmm.
was the late 1800s
Hmm.
into the early 1900s. But those weren't cast; those were actually struck by machines. So casting is actually the traditional Chinese, East Asian process of making coins. So it's basically you have a mold uh, that has like the imprints of coins, and then you pour metal, like molten metal, in it, and then uh, take them out. You follow them down, and then yeah,
Uh-huh. And was that sort of, would you have to have a huge amount of cash coins to purchase something, or sort of how did that, what
yeah.
was the
So
sort of, how was this circulating?
yeah, so there were actually things called strings of cash, which were 1,000 cash all on like one string, because cash had like really minuscule value. So it's basically equivalent to like I'm not saying like like exchange rate was like a penny to a cash coin, but it's basically like a penny because like really low value. So strings of cash were often used in commerce and yeah.
And how common, was cash coins? I don't even, maybe you could detail when it starts, but are there cash coins from 1500 and 1800 all trading in the mid 1800s, or what was the sort of life cycle of a cash coin?
Yeah, so that's actually pretty interesting. That's actually a pretty interesting topic. So there were actually coins from the Northern Song Dynasty still circulating in the late Qing Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty is basically the 1600s to early 1900s. So, and the Song Dynasty is 1900s or 900s to the 1200s. So you can imagine that coins from 1,000 years prior were still circulating in the early 1900s, late 1800s. So yeah,
Wow.
and they're also Ming Dynasty coins. It was just all intermixed and yeah.
Gotcha. And were there other currencies within China, not in terms of trading with other countries that were valued, or was it really all just this basic system of we have 1,000 cash or something like, and maybe was it always just one coin is one cash coin is equal to like one cash unit?
Uh, could you kind of like specify it further?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, were there any? So maybe just to clarify at a super basic level, is one cash coin, one coin with a hole in it, is that like one cash, or would there be certain coins that had a higher face value than others?
Yeah, so there were actually cash coins that weren't just one cash, but five cash, 10 cash, 100 cash, 50 cash, 500 cash, even 1,000 cash. And they were just one coin. They weren't like a bunch of coins totaling up to 1,000 cash. But so there were actually five cash coins in the Northern Song Dynasty, um, 10 cash coins too, but 1,000 cash, 500 cash, 100 cash, 50 cash, those were mostly made in the Qing Dynasty, in the reigns of the Xinfeng Emperor and the Tongzhi Emperor and Guangxu Emperor.
Gotcha. And was this the sort of thing where they would just make the coins much larger and you'd have like a huge 1,000 cash coin? Or was it just by, how we have $100 bill that's only a tiny bit of size different from a $1 bill?
Yeah, so they were definitely bigger. Like with each denomination that gets bigger, the coin also gets bigger. But it's not like um, the weight of 1,000 cash coin is equivalent to 1,000 individual cash. It's just larger in size. It's to signify it's larger in value.
All right, so I mean that makes sense. And then in terms of the collectability, I know sometimes you're doing some buying and selling, and I guess this conversation maybe is a little less focused on dealing than some of my other ones that I have. But is there a market where people are trying to collect like one of every different cash coin, or are there so many different mints and so many different years to cover? Like, how do people, or if somebody wanted to get into it, how would they go about collecting cash coinage or East Asian coinage in general?
All right, first of all, there's like thousands and thousands, actually tens of thousands of varieties of cash coins. So it's basically impossible to collect every single cash coin because within each mint of each emperor's coin, there's still like a couple like varieties, and then there's like even whole books on them. So yeah, but in terms of the market in the U.S., there's like really really few cash coin collectors. So prices here are generally, kind of different from the rest of the world. In China, obviously, it's more like it's in higher demand, but again, it's not as collectible as like, Morgan dollars or US type set coins.
Yeah. How do people generally approach it, or do you have any collection? But like, how do people kind of not even pay attention to just doing a bunch of the common cash? Because in my impression, they're like maybe $1 each, even if it's 500 years old. Most of them are quite worn. How do people go about ascribing value to them? And like, are there some that are super rare, or is it more the different types of monies like Japanese bar money or something super rare?
Yeah, so I've actually gotten a couple lots that each individual coin is basically, if you divide it by the bulk value, each individual coin is like 20 cents each.
Okay.
But they're obviously damaged. But like Qing Dynasty and Northern Song Dynasty coins, those are super common. You can find them for under $1 easy. So you were asking, are there any super rare cash? Definitely, there are a lot of super rare cash, but uh, I doubt that they would get like a lot of attention in auctions because not many people collect them unless they're the machine struck coinage of the late Qing Emperor or Empire uh, of silver and copper uh, coins that aren't with the square hole.
Maybe we could speak for like 2 or 3 minutes in terms of, so you're saying these are machine struck as opposed to being cast in the traditional method of doing it. When does this the Qing ending, and sort of what time period were these rarer coins, and if you have an idea on what a coin from, what sort of prices would be associated with a normal one from the machine struck.
Yeah, so machine struck coins, they're generally a bit more expensive than cash coins. But if you have silver coinage, there's a lot that are rare, like Taiwan Mint, Qing Dynasty silver. Those are like super expensive, more than $500 each, easy, in
Mm.
Stacks and Bowers or Stacks Bowers auctions. So yeah, but there's also really common ones like Kwangtung, 20-cent piece, 10-cent piece, 5-cent piece, um, that were machine struck. Those are like super common. You can find them for near melt value.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, those do sound familiar. Sometimes I get some world coin lots in, and I'll say province of or Guangdong or Hunan, or there's a lot of different ones, and it'll be like mason tangerines, or things that don't look quite like cash. Was the machine striking? That's just because it's a more modern technology, and they wanted. Do you have any insight onto why they moved over to machine striking, and maybe why they were striking coins that weren't outwardly denominated in cash?
Yeah, so in the 1880s, I don't know if you know this name, but Heaton and Sons. That was a company in Great Britain. So it came over to Kwangtung at the request of the Qing government to set up a new mint
Mhm.
that purely struck machine struck coins. So they set it up and they started striking around the late 1880s, I would say, and yeah, and it kind of spread over to like other provinces. So there are mints in Hubei province, uh, Fujian province, all over China. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was the appeal to the dynasty to have out outsourced striking?
Yeah, so they were trying to modernize at the time because they were like kind of behind on like technology and all that stuff back then, and it was just like more appealing because uh, it's less labor intensive for machine struck coins as opposed to like casting. You still have to take them out from the molds and file them down. But yeah.
And was this did it integrate seamlessly with the old versions of cash? I mean, some of them seem to have outwardly like 10 cash on it, but others of them seem to be on a different sort of scale. Or is it sort of like the dollar to the cent, where there was some other unit to cash?
Uh, I'm not really sure because I don't really focus myself on machine struck coins, but I'm pretty sure because machine struck coins are also on the the one cash, two cash, three cash monetary system. So I'm pretty sure if it was a 10 cash machine struck coin, it would be equal to 10 of the cast one cash coins.
Okay, and then what was kind of the end game? Because obviously now it's the yuan, and different Asian coinages and currencies. Is there kind of a time when it all came to a close?
Well, machine struck coins, they never came to close. So the PRC and the ROC, so basically Taiwan and mainland China, they're still machine striking coins to this day. But casting came to an end in 1912 in China after the Republican government, which took over in I think 1911 or 1912. Um, and yeah.
And in terms of the different countries, going back maybe a little bit in the timeline, was there non-cash coinage, say, circulating in like modern day Mongolia or Japan, or to the south of China, what's now like Thailand and those sorts of places? I mean, I know that in the late 1800s, for example, Thailand had its own currency, and so did Japan and Korea. But was cash kind of universally accepted, or were there different kind of currencies in different localities within Asia?
Yeah, so in China, in the late 1800s, they imported a lot of foreign silver, like Mexican reals, trade dollars from Great Britain, and that kind of circulated with merchants over there, but mostly it was still a cash system.
Gotcha. Interesting. Um, if if you were talking to somebody who's interested in starting a collection of East Asian currency, where would you tell them to start, or what would kind of give its way to like having a cool collection? And how could somebody learn how to better identify their coinage?
Yeah, so first of all, don't buy expensive coins first. That's just a terrible move because Chinese cash are counterfeited a lot, and I got I get a lot of DMs saying like asking me to identify like different cash coins, and I can tell you like 75% of them are fake. So if you want to start off, well, you got to start off somewhere, but buy inexpensive coins like under $5, under a dollar. Those
Mhm.
are those are okay, but don't go like on a shopping spree and spend like $500 on cash coins when you first start. You have to get yourself familiar with bulk coins to know what's counterfeit, what's not, to get the hang of it.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, and what's your personal collecting objectives within East Asian coins?
Yeah, so I kind of want to assemble a full set of Taiwan mint coins, which were minted in the reigns of Kingxi, Qianlong, Xinfeng, and Tongzi. So 4 coins. Those are actually pretty rare because Taiwan mint coins are pretty scarce. They're considered pretty scarce in Qing Dynasty coinage. So I haven't acquired any of the coins yet, but I may be acquiring one soon because I have my eye on one of them. So yeah.
And what time period would these have been minted?
So the Kangxi coins, they're minted from 1689 to 1692. The Qianlong coins, they were actually not made at the Taiwan Mint. They were actually made in Fuzhou, Fujian province, on behalf of Taiwan. And so they were minted in the 1740s. We don't really have a exact like uh, time like or date span for the Qianlong Taiwan coins. So that's that. And for the subsequent reigns of Jiaqing, Daoguang, they didn't really mint any Taiwan cash coins. And in the Xinfeng era, Xinfeng Emperor's reign, uh, there were records that said that the Taiwan minted some coins from 1853 to 1854. Um, a expert in Chinese cash coins also says that there are records saying that there were iron mint coins or iron cash coins minted, but so far nobody has discovered any of that. So it may be just like a record that's saying they were approved, but they were never made. And in the Tongzi era, there were also Taiwan cash coins made, but it's highly likely there weren't official issues. There were maybe like private coins, private issues, or charms, tokens. Yeah.
And are there any, I know that there are, but I'm just not familiar. Are there any main grading companies that deal with Chinese coins, or that are? I assume that they're outside of. Maybe they might be owned by the same, by Collectors Universe or something like that. But are there grading companies for East Asian coins?
Yeah, so there's a couple. The ones that I can think of right now are Gongbo Coin Grading, that's from China, and Huaxia Coin Grading, that's also from China. There's one company from Taiwan, but I can't remember its name, and I think there's another company. It's also from China. I can't remember its name, but I don't really have any slabs of those yet. So yeah.
Cool. And I know that I've heard the Asian market is really hot in terms of coins right now. Are you seeing that? And can you comment?
Yeah. So in terms of cash coins, not really, but in terms of like the machine truck coins, again, we're going back to that. Silver coins, those are really hot right now. I have a source that I usually buy uh, Chinese machine truck silver coins, and he's all out because it's being really, really hot, like the market recently. So like dealers have been scooping up stock, and yeah.
Interesting. Do you, I would assume that maybe it's because there's a lot of wealth creation from China, Japan, Taiwan, lots of different places in Asia, and maybe the collectibles markets for a long time were sort of underappreciated and that's just sort of catching up to where some of the U.S. collectibles market has been. Is that a fair analysis?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think it has to do something with like, during this time, like, the COVID pandemic, basically all kinds of coins have been skyrocketing in prices. So it may have to do something with that.
Makes sense. Is there anything else? I think we could get into more specific topics in the future, but that you would recommend or that you would want to tell people about the history of East Asian coinage?
Right now, or
Yeah, yeah. And in closing, maybe some key things that I just didn't think to ask because I'm not familiar with East Asian coinage really at all.
yeah, yeah. So in Japan, I haven't mentioned Japan yet. Japan also had their own cash coins. So actually, the first cash coin was called I think it was called Wado Kaichin,
Hmm.
and it was minted, I think, in the 16 or the 600s or 900s,
Hmm.
80, and those were part of the, or that was part of the 12 Ancient series. Those all of the 12 Ancients, those are really really rare, and basically more than $100 each. That's all I can say. And for $100, that's still pretty cheap because you'd probably get like a really heavily damaged coin for that price. But after that, there were a couple issues. I'm not really going to get into that. There were some issues called beta sen, which were basically literally, well, actually, their literal meaning was bad cash. But I'm not really going to go into that because it's kind of complicated. And the most notable series of Japanese cash were Kane Suho, which were minted from the 1600s to the time of the Meiji Restoration in 1868 or 1867. Sorry, I don't really know the specific date,
That's fine.
but yeah. So those are kind of split into two series. The Kokane, which means old Kane, and the Shinkane. So the old Kane, those are kind of hard to identify between, because within Kokane, there's also different varieties that distinguish between mints, but those are really, really hard to identify because the calligraphic variations are like really, really small. In Shinkane, there's even more calligraphic variations, and yeah, it comes from a variety of mints all across Japan.
And how did the two countries interact monetarily?
Yeah, so if you kind of know a little bit about Japanese coinage in about the 1600s, 1500s, 1400s, around that time, um, you can see that a lot of Japanese cash that were minted in Japan, they actually had the exact same inscriptions as Chinese cash. So but you can distinguish them by calligraphic variations. So that kind of hints, there was like a lot of interaction between China and Japan in terms of
Mhm.
uh, monetary issues. Yeah.
And uh, and so that sort of there was a fair amount of cross pollination. How far do you know where cash coins were used in terms of would they have gone all the way to like Tibet modern day, or would they have been reaching into the how far south were they? How widely used were they?
Yeah, so they were actually used in Indonesia because Indonesia actually had a lot of has a sizable or yeah sizable Chinese community. So they kind of there's a lot of cash coins down there that circulated. In Korea, there were also their own cash coins. In Tibet, they actually didn't have they actually didn't use cash coins. They had their own system of tankas and um, different currencies. But it also reached west to Xinjiang, as many people know. You probably know where Xinjiang is because the issue with China and Xinjiang right now. But they had their own cash coins too. They weren't exactly the same as the Chinese cash coins we know, because the back of the or the reverse of the cash coins been in Xinjiang, they have Turkic script and Manchu script and Chinese script, or no, not Chinese script, Manchu script and Turkic script on the reverse. While most Chinese cash coins in the Qing dynasty in China proper had only Manchu or Manchu Chinese rivers.
Okay. That's interesting though. It certainly sounds like they traveled quite a bit, and it's very unlike, I would think that that's maybe one of the longest standing monetary systems outside of the idea of like weighing gold and silver, but to have really their own
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
copper.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that I don't know about this, but I appreciate the overview. Are there any other outside of Chinese and Japanese cash and any other kind of key players that I might not be thinking about?
In Korea, I haven't mentioned that either. Well, I kind of touched on it, but so they have their own monetary system called the Moon.
Mhm.
Basically, China had their cash, which was in Chinese is called won. So one won, but in Japan it was called the Mon, and in Korea it was called the Moon. So they had their own cash, and in my opinion, it's not as interesting as Chinese cash or Japanese cash because I don't know if it's just like I'm kind of dumb in that field of cash coins because I haven't really looked into it, but it seems to me that there's not too many varieties. But I'm probably wrong about that.
Okay. And how far back does the Mun go?
Uh, I think it goes back to the Goryeo dynasty, which well they started casting them in the 900s. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. So that's quite a bit. And do you have any sense for, was it a one-to-one valuation where you could trade with some Mun and some cash, or was it a clear, there was an exchange system?
I'm not really sure about that because
Okay.
I haven't really looked into it.
Cool. Um, And what's your opinion? Do you think that cash collecting will grow in the future, or is it too complicated to catch on, or do you think that maybe as they're more easily identifiable? I think that that's a big issue, but
Yeah, so I've heard from a lot of people, the main issue is there's way too many varieties in Chinese cash. It's basically like an endless loophole. And it's way too complicated, and not everybody kind of like can read Chinese characters or whatnot. So it's like that's one of the biggest obstacles. So I don't think it's gonna grow much, but maybe a little bit, and maybe it'll decline a little bit. It's like up and down. So
yeah, I mean, one idea I'm just having in my mind is like I think, normally I'm pretty much against like marketed coins. Like I think in my desk here, let me see if I have an example. Like this sort of a thing where it's like, there's no additional value and they use the plastic and then try to charge a lot more for it. But if there was
yeah,
something that was like a cheap to produce coin holder, like how you have PCGS and GC coins that had very clear, attributed this is from the 1740s and a little bit of historical information. I think, depends how cheaply you could do it, but if it was correctly identified, it could be a fun way to sell for 15 or 20 bucks or something like that.
yeah, sure. But most of the examples of I've actually seen one of those, like cash coins and one of those holders with like background information, and like kind of some decorations to make it more appealing to the customer. But those are like grossly overpriced. Like a coin that's worth $1, they sell it for like $15. So
Yeah.
to me, like I wouldn't recommend the beginning collector to kind of break into that. Like
Yeah.
break into cash coins by buying bulk lots. That's like the best advice I can give.
And can you get some good ones on eBay, or is it more of a challenging sourcing game?
Yeah, on eBay you can find some decent ones. For me, I'm kind of cheap, so I have to find like the best price for everything. So I don't usually go on eBay, uh, but if you don't really read Chinese, like because the sources I use, like uh, their websites are in Chinese and whatnot. But if you don't read Chinese or something, you can use eBay. Just research a coin beforehand. Don't overpay for the coins, and you should be fine.
Cool. Any other closing advice? I enjoyed having sort of a fun overview, and I think I'm nowhere, still a just fledgling beginner in terms of understanding it, but I think it was helpful to have a lot of the context and even just wrapping my head around one system that goes for so long was so cool. but anything
Yeah, yeah.
you'd want to mention?
Uh, I don't really have anything to say, but I'm just gonna say, collecting cash coins is really enjoyable. Like, especially if you want to enjoy numismatics by kind of having something to research or having something to spend a lot of time on. Doing varieties and analysis and whatnot. I feel like cash coins would be perfect for that. So.
Awesome. And maybe one thing that I didn't ask you about, what was the details of the article that you wrote for PTGS?
Yeah, so it was actually for the YN corner. In case you guys don't know, YN means Young Numismatist. So that was just like kind of a thing that I saw. Like there were other kids doing it on Instagram, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool. So I reached out to the editor, and I was like, hey, can I do an article? And he was like, sure. And then it came out about 4 months after I submitted it. So it just basically gives an overview of my collecting journey and my favorite coin.
Okay. And what is your favorite coin?
Yeah, so it's the Kangxi Taiwan Cash because on the reverse it actually um, has a Chinese character for Taiwan Tai. So that's the right hand side on the reverse. On the left hand side as um, the Manchu inscription for Tai also, except it's a Manchu. So, but the real like appealing part about this coin is uh, it was minted in Taiwan and it also has that Tai character. Because most cash coins from the Qing Dynasty, as I mentioned, back just has either full Manchu or Manchu in Chinese. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving this introduction, and I look forward to reading any future publications that you have out, and maybe people can go check out your Instagram for more information going forward.
Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and definitely subscribe to the channel and connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also have a website, treasuretownYT.com, where you should go so that you can learn more about coins as well as what's happening on the channel and possibly find a place to sell your coins and collectibles. I also want to talk about some of my other projects like coinmeltprice.com, which shows precious metals prices as well as the melt values of coins containing those precious metals, both US and world. I also have coinsmetalscards.com, which will develop into a full marketplace as well as a news source for coins, metals, cards, as the name might suggest. And then treasuretowncoins.com, which long term will be my coin dealing entity separate from the channel. And lastly, whatsthegrade.com, which will be a stickering service for already certified collectibles where you can get a approval or verification of the grade on the holder. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you on some of my other videos.